A frail-looking girl, dressed in worn-out clothes with a weary expression, sat alone on the sidewalk outside a high-end restaurant in Los Angeles. In her small hands, she held a simple, handwritten sign. To most people, she was just another homeless child, someone they could pretend not to see. Pedestrians hurried past, deliberately avoiding eye contact, unwilling to acknowledge her presence. But when Keanu Reeves stepped out of the restaurant, something about her made him pause. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but there was something different about this girl. What he didn't realize, however, was that she was hiding a secret. And the reason she so desperately needed money would leave him utterly speechless. That night would change not only her life but his as well. Los Angeles shimmered like a living painting, its vibrant lights bouncing off the rain-slicked pavement. The streets were lined with elegant restaurants and designer boutiques, their windows glowing warmly against the cool night air. Laughter and murmured conversations spilled from within, adding to the city's lively hum. Among these establishments was a renowned hotspot, a favorite among celebrities and the city's elite. That evening, it was particularly bustling. Keanu Reeves stepped outside, his expression thoughtful, his mind perhaps still lingering on the conversation he'd just shared over dinner. But just as he was about to walk away, something caught his attention. She sat there, barely noticeable in the sea of moving bodies, a girl who couldn't have been older than 12 or 13. Wrapped in a worn blanket, she clutched a small sign, its message scribbled in shaky handwriting. Her expression flickered between fragile hope and quiet resignation as she watched the world pass her by, unseen and ignored. Keanu hesitated. He noticed how people deliberately averted their eyes, treating her as if she didn't exist. The sight stirred something in him, memories of his own struggles, of challenges he had once faced. Moved by an instinctive empathy, he stepped toward her. Kneeling to her level, his voice was gentle. "Are you okay?" The girl's eyes widened in surprise. It was clear she hadn't expected anyone, especially not him, to stop. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I just need help. It's urgent." Keanu studied her closely. There was something in her gaze, fear, determination, and something else he couldn't quite place. He exhaled softly before asking, "What do you need the money for?" For a moment, she didn't answer. Instead, she dropped her gaze to the pavement, her small fingers gripping the edges of her sign as if searching for the right words. But the silence stretched on, growing heavier with each passing second. Keanu could sense her hesitation. Whatever she was hiding, it wasn't easy for her to share. He didn't want to push, but at the same time, he couldn't just walk away. The world around them bustled on. Cars honked, conversations flowed, laughter echoed, but in this small pocket of space, it was just the two of them. "If it's really urgent, maybe I can help," he offered, his tone calm and reassuring. The girl lifted her eyes for the briefest moment before looking away again. Her voice was barely audible. "It's not for me, but I don't know if I should say." That answer only deepened Keanu's curiosity. He noticed her slight shiver, was it from the cold or from nerves? Either way, an inexplicable sense of responsibility settled in his chest. Instead of pressing her, he tried a different approach. "Have you eaten dinner yet?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Come on, then," he said, nodding toward a small cafe across the street. "It's too cold to stay out here." The girl hesitated again, glancing around as if weighing whether or not it was safe to follow him. After a few moments of uncertainty, she slowly nodded, grabbing her sign and a small, worn backpack before standing up. Inside the cafe, Keanu chose a quiet table in the corner. A waitress handed the menus, but he ordered for both of them, 2 hot drinks and sandwiches. As they waited, he attempted to start a conversation. "Did you ask anyone else for help today?" She sighed, fiddling with the strap of her backpack. Nobody wanted to help. They just pretended not to see me. Her voice carried a mix of frustration and sadness. Keanu nodded, understanding the weight of her words. The waitress soon returned, placing their orders on the table. The girl wrapped her hands around the warm cup as if soaking in the heat, her small fingers trembling slightly. After a few moments, Keanu gently asked again, "Now that you're warm, can you tell me why you need help?" The girl hesitated, her gaze locked on the swirling steam rising from her drink. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but firm. "I just need to save someone. Before it's too late." Her words sent a chill through him. There was something about the way she said it, something desperate, something raw. It left him more intrigued than ever. The cafe had fallen quiet, the occasional clinking of spoons against cups the only sound between them. Keanu studied her carefully, sensing there was more she wasn't saying. Instead of pressing further, he decided to share something personal. "You know, when I was a kid, I had some tough times too." His voice was low, steady. "I lost my father early on. My mom worked all the time, and I often felt alone. But even in the darkest moments, I learned that there's always a way forward." The girl stopped fiddling with the rim of her cup. Slowly, she looked up at him, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. She hadn't expected him to open up like that. For a few seconds, she said nothing. Then, her lips trembled, and in a hesitant tone, she murmured, "I lost my parents too." Keanu leaned in slightly, offering silent encouragement. "In a car accident," she continued, her voice fragile. I was waiting for them at school. They said they'd pick me up early that day." A shaky breath. "But they never came." Her words hung heavy in the air. Keanu felt the weight of them settle deep in his chest. He knew, better than anyone, that this was a pain no child should ever have to endure. "I'm so sorry," Keanu said sincerely, his voice gentle. "That must have been devastating." The girl took a deep breath, trying to hold herself together, but the emotions overwhelmed her. Tears welled up in her eyes and began streaming down her cheeks. She covered her face with trembling hands, her small frame shaking with quiet sobs. Keanu didn't rush her. He simply waited, offering her the space she needed. Then, without a word, he extended a hand, not to intrude, but to let her know she wasn't alone. Between sniffles, her voice wavered. "My mom was amazing," she whispered. "She could turn anything into something special. And my dad, he made you feel like the most important person in the world." Her breath hitched. "I miss them so much." Keanu gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "They sound like incredible people," he said softly. "And I know they'd be proud of how strong you are." A faint smile flickered across her tear-streaked face, but just as quickly, it faded. "I live with my uncle now," she admitted, her tone growing somber. "He doesn't like me much. I think he only took me in because he felt like he had to." She hesitated, then shook her head. "It's not the same. It'll never be the same." She clenched her fists, her knuckles turning white. "The only thing I have left of them is what they taught me. Anne. Toby." Keanu tilted his head slightly. "Toby?" She nodded. "He's the kitten my parents gave me before they died. He's the only thing that still connects me to them. I promised myself I'd take care of him. No matter what." Keanu's voice was gentle but firm. "Where is he now?" The girl hesitated, wiping her tears with the napkin he'd handed her. I can't say. Not yet." Her reluctance only deepened Keanu's curiosity. Whatever had happened to Toby, it was clear she was terrified to talk about it. But he could tell how much the kitten meant to her. The night pressed on, and the cafe around them grew quieter as customers filtered out. Keanu watched her carefully. She seemed calmer now, but there was still hesitation in her eyes. He knew trust couldn't be forced, but he was determined to help. "You know," he said with a small smile, "taking care of someone we love, sometimes, that's what keeps us going." He studied her expression. "And it sounds like Toby is very special to you." The girl nodded slowly, gripping the strap of her backpack. She seemed to be debating whether to open up further. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "His name is Toby," she said, a faint, melancholic smile tugging at her lips. "He was just a tiny kitten when my parents gave him to me. Mom called him our little miracle because he showed up on our doorstep one night, on my birthday." She paused, as if momentarily lost in the memory. Her eyes shimmered with a mix of sorrow and warmth. "After they were gone, he became everything to me. He was there when I cried. When I couldn't sleep." Her voice wavered. "He's the only thing that still makes me feel like my parents are close." Keanu nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "And now?" he asked gently. "What happened to Toby?" The pain returned to her face as she looked away. "My uncle said he couldn't keep him," she murmured. "He said it was already hard enough having me in the house, that a cat was just another burden." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He wanted to get rid of him." Keanu's jaw tightened. He felt a wave of protective instinct rise within him. "Is that why you ran away?" She nodded, her eyes brimming with fresh tears. "I knew he wouldn't understand. Toby is all I have left of my parents. I couldn't let that happen." Keanu took a deep breath, absorbing her words. This girl had already lost so much, and now she was fighting with everything she had to keep the last piece of her past intact. "And where is Toby now?" he asked, his tone steady and calm. She hesitated, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "I hid him in a safe place, but," she swallowed hard, her hands tightening around the napkin. "He's sick. And I don't know what to do." Her voice broke. "He's stopped eating. He can barely move. That's why I need money. He needs help, but I don't know how to pay for it." She finally lifted her gaze to Keanu, and in her eyes, he saw not just sadness but determination. "My mom was a vet," she continued, her voice growing steadier. "She always told me to watch for signs because animals can't tell us what's wrong. Toby is weak. He's lost weight. And, he's thrown up a few times." She clenched her jaw. "I think he ate something he shouldn't have, like plastic or a thread." Her breathing quickened. "Mom called it an obstruction. I remember her saying that once when she treated another sick cat." Keanu was struck by the girl's attentiveness. Despite her young age, it was clear she had absorbed everything her mother had taught her. "You seem to know a lot about what might be wrong," he said, impressed. "That's incredible." She sighed, frustration creeping into her voice. "It's not enough. I don't have the medicine or the tools my mom used. And if I don't do something fast, he might not survive." Keanu placed a reassuring hand over hers. "We'll find Toby and help him. You don't have to do this alone." Her lip trembled. "You'd really do that?" she asked, almost as if she couldn't believe it. Keanu smiled. "Yes. But you have to trust me. We'll do this together." The girl's story had unraveled a heartbreaking truth. Her mother's teachings had given her enough knowledge to recognize Toby's dire condition, but not the resources to save him. Now, Keanu was stepping in, taking on the responsibility of helping her, setting the stage for a desperate race against time. The girl wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to shield herself from the pain of her own words. "I did everything my mom taught me," she whispered. "But it's not enough. I don't know what else to do." She stopped walking, staring down at the pavement. Her voice cracked. "If she were here, she'd know what to do. I just miss her." Keanu stopped beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's okay to miss them," he said, his tone gentle, steady. "But you're being incredibly brave. And now that we're together, we'll do everything we can to help Toby." She looked up at him, and for the first time, a spark of gratitude flickered in her eyes. "He's all I have left of my parents," she whispered. "I can't fail him." Keanu nodded. "And you won't." They walked in silence until they reached a narrow alley. The girl immediately crouched down, her hands moving quickly as she rummaged behind a stack of boxes. Carefully, she pushed aside a folded blanket, revealing a small hidden space beneath it. Gentle smile. Familiar voices and touch can do wonders for recovery. The girl nodded, her fingers stroking Toby's soft fur with delicate care. The kitten let out another faint meow, his tail twitching slightly. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Keanu could see the tension in the girl's shoulders ease, if only slightly. For the first time since they met, a small spark of relief flickered in her eyes. "Can I stay with him?" she asked, turning to the vet, her voice almost pleading. The vet hesitated. "He still needs rest, and too much stimulation could tire him out." The girl bit her lip, looking down at Toby. I don't want him to wake up and feel alone." Keanu stepped in. "How about this?" he offered. "We stay for a little while, and then we let him rest. That way, he knows you're here, and we can check on him again later." The girl glanced at Keanu, then back at Toby. She exhaled slowly and nodded. "Okay." They sat together in the quiet room, the rhythmic beeping of the medical monitors the only sound besides Toby's soft breathing. Keanu watched as the girl traced small circles on Toby's fur, her fingers light as feathers. "You know," she murmured, "when my parents first brought him home, he was so scared he wouldn't even eat. My mom had to hold him in her arms for hours before he finally started to trust us." Keanu smiled. "Looks like you're doing the same for him now." She blinked up at him, surprised, then looked back at Toby. "Yeah," she whispered. "I guess I am." Keanu could see it clearly now, Toby wasn't just a pet to her. He was a piece of the life she had lost, the last tangible connection to the love and warmth of her family. Losing him would have meant losing that part of herself, too. And she had fought with everything she had to save him. Keanu felt something shift inside him. He had thought helping her was just about saving a kitten. But now, he understood, it was about saving her, too. The vet eventually returned, gently reminding them that Toby needed to rest. The girl hesitated, her hand lingering on the kitten's tiny frame before she slowly pulled away. "Sleep well, buddy," she whispered. "I'll be back soon." Keanu placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder as they stepped out of the room. "He's a fighter," he told her. "Just like you." The girl gave him a small, tired smile. "I hope so." As they walked out into the cool morning air, Keanu made a silent promise. He wasn't just going to help Toby. He was going to make sure this girl never felt alone again. Keanu reread the letter, a quiet smile playing on his lips. He could almost hear her voice in the words, a mixture of gratitude and newfound hope. The girl who had once been lost and afraid was now finding her way, step by step, with Toby by her side. He leaned back in his chair, gazing out the window. The world outside bustled with its usual energy, cars passing, people moving about their day, but for him, this letter was a reminder that sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness had the greatest impact. His phone buzzed on the table, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a message from the organization. She's doing well. Toby is thriving. You should visit sometime. Keanu exhaled, his chest swelling with a warmth he couldn't quite explain. Maybe he would visit. Maybe he wouldn't. What mattered was knowing she was safe, that she had a future to look forward to. He picked up his journal, flipping to a blank page, and wrote. Sometimes, we cross paths with people not by chance, but because we are meant to. She saved Toby, and in doing so, she saved a piece of herself. And maybe, just maybe, she saved a piece of me too. He closed the book, placing it beside the letter. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and amber. A new chapter was beginning, for her, for Toby, and in some small way, for him too. And that was enough.